He only walked into Bernardin to close a deal, but when his eyes froze on a woman he once loved, seated with 3 children who looked exactly like him, every wall he built around his heart began to crumble. The city pulsed beneath him like a living, breathing machine. From the 58th floor of his glass tower, Adrian Cole looked down at the blur of yellow taxis and rain-slicked avenues, the kind of view that once gave him satisfaction. Now it gave him nothing. Behind him, assistants shuffled papers, phones buzzed, and a board of directors awaited his verdict on a billion-dollar acquisition. Adrian adjusted the cuff of his tailored shirt, his face unreadable to the world. He was the embodiment of control, a man who built an empire with precision and ruthlessness. But when the boardroom emptied and the glass doors clicked shut, the silence pressed in. He walked through his penthouse that night, marble, steel, wine racks filled with vintages he rarely touched, and felt like a museum curated for a ghost. No laughter, no warmth, just the echo of his own footsteps. Money could buy him everything. It could not buy him the one thing he once had and lost. Her. On the other side of the city, in a small brownstone walk-up in Harlem, Naomi Greene was waging a very different battle. She balanced one lunchbox on her hip, zipped another backpack with her free hand, and used her foot to nudge a 3rd child toward the door. Shoes on Malik. No, not those, the clean ones. Mariyah, don't forget your homework. And Micah, Lord, don't make me tell you again about brushing those teeth. The triplets scattered like sparks, their laughter filling the kitchen. Naomi's voice carried both exasperation and love, her tone worn thin by exhaustion, yet warm by devotion. She had built this life by herself, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. 3 children with the same stubborn chin, the same piercing hazel eyes. Their father had never met them. She didn't let herself linger on that thought. There was no time for bitterness when there were mouths to feed, lessons to teach, bills to pay. Naomi tied her scarf tighter around her curls, checked her reflection quickly in the smudged hallway mirror, and her gaze softened at the sight of her kids. She was tired, but she was proud. She had given them love, even if it cost her everything else. Adrian's life and Naomi's life could not have felt more different, and yet fate had a way of pulling opposites into collision. That evening, Adrian's calendar placed him at Le Bernardin, Manhattan's crown jewel of French dining. A deal with a European investor had to be sealed, and such deals were always made over white linen and champagne. He arrived in his black town car, stepping out with the ease of a man accustomed to cameras flashing and doors opening for him. Inside, the chandeliers glowed soft gold, and the room was alive with murmured conversations and clinking glasses. The maitre d' greeted Adrian by name, guiding him toward a private table at the back. He didn't notice the family, seated near the window at first. Naomi hadn't planned to be at Le Bernardin either. Her boss had surprised her with a gift card for her birthday. "You deserve something beautiful, Naomi," she had said, and after much hesitation, she decided to use it. The kids had insisted on joining, their wide eyes hungry for an adventure beyond takeout pizza. She smoothed her dress, simple but elegant, her nerves buzzing. She wanted her children to experience something special, even if only for one night. They chatted around the table, their faces glowing with excitement. Mariyah held her fork awkwardly. Malik bounced his seat, and Micah whispered questions about every dish. Naomi laughed softly, savoring the rare joy of seeing them so mesmerized. For a brief moment, the weight of her struggles lifted, and then, across the restaurant, Adrian's gaze lifted. At first, he thought he was hallucinating. The curve of her neck, the familiar lilt of her laugh, the way she tilted her head when she listened. It was Naomi. Naomi, the woman he had once sworn he would love forever, the woman he had let slip away. But his breath caught not because of her, but because of them. 3 children sat at her table. 3 children with his eyes. The glass in his hand trembled. For the first time in years, Adrian Cole felt his armor crack. Naomi's laughter faded as she felt it. That invisible tug, that weight of a stare too heavy to ignore. She turned, slowly, her heart lurching violently against her ribs. There he was, older, sharper, but unmistakably him, the man who had broken her heart. The man she had never truly stopped loving, even when she hated him. And now he was staring at her children. The air between them was electric, thick with a history neither of them had spoken of in years. Naomi's hand instinctively reached for Micah's shoulder, her body tensing protectively. Adrian's jaw clenched, his mind a storm of disbelief, anger, and something deeper, something he dared not name. Neither spoke, neither moved, yet everything had already changed. If you were in Adrian's shoes, how would you react? Approach the table or walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments. The deal was forgotten. The wine list was forgotten. Adrian Cole, master of negotiations, sat frozen in his seat, watching his entire past, present, and future unfold in front of him at a table draped in white linen. Naomi, and 3 children who could not belong to anyone else. His investor droned on about market expansions, but the words blurred into meaningless noise. All Adrian heard was a rush of blood pounding in his ears. His hand, usually so steady, curled tightly around the stem of his glass. The boy, Micah, though Adrian didn't know his name yet, tilted his head in a way that sent a pang straight through Adrian's chest. He used to do that, as a child, whenever he was curious. And the girl, Mariyah, had Naomi's eyes but his stubborn chin. Even Malik, who fidgeted endlessly in his chair, reminded him of himself at 12, restless and impatient. He could not deny it. They were his. But how? Why? His investor finally paused, waiting for his response. Adrian muttered something perfunctory, excused himself with a cold smile, and stood. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away, to retreat to his world of control where surprises didn't exist. Instead, his feet betrayed him. They carried him straight toward her table. Naomi saw him coming. Her pulse thundered, her throat tightening around unspoken words. She hadn't prepared for this moment, the collision of past and present. The father her children had never known walking toward them in a restaurant where she had dared to believe she was safe. "Mommy?" Mariyah whispered, noticing the sudden change in her mother's expression. Naomi forced a smile, but her hand tightened protectively on her daughter's arm. "It's fine, baby. Just eat your vegetables." Then he was there, standing beside their table, larger than life, just as commanding as the day he left. Only harder now, his features sharpened by years of success and solitude. His voice, when it came, was low but steady. Naomi, her name in his mouth, was both a dagger and a bomb. She inhaled slowly, gathering her composure. "Adrian." The children glanced between them, wide-eyed. Malik whispered, "Mommy, who is that man?" Her throat constricted. She hadn't prepared an answer. Adrian's gaze dropped to the children, his chest constricting painfully. His voice faltered. They look—" He couldn't finish. Naomi's jaw tightened. "Don't." One word, sharp as glass. It sliced through the thick air between them. The triplets fell silent, sensing something far bigger than themselves. Adrian pulled out the empty chair across from her. "We need to talk." Naomi's eyes narrowed. "Not here. Not now." "Now," he insisted, his voice carrying the same authority that bent corporations to his will. But Naomi was no corporation. She leaned forward, her voice a whisper lined with steel. "You don't get to walk back into my life and dictate terms, Adrian. Not after—" She stopped herself, glancing at the children, swallowing the flood of words threatening to spill. Adrian exhaled, fighting the urge to slam the table just to feel something solid. His entire life, he had built castles of control. And in one night, this woman, the only one who ever truly knew him, had reduced it all to rubble. His eyes softened despite himself. "Naomi, are they?" She met his gaze head-on, her voice quiet but searing. "What do you think?" The words pierced deeper than any accusation. He looked at them again, really looked. Malik's restless energy, Mariyah's quiet thoughtfulness, Micah's curious tilt ahead. Pieces of himself scattered across 3 little souls. The room seemed to tilt. He reached for the table, steadying himself, his hand brushing against a discarded crayon Malik had been using to scribble on the back of the menu. The sight of that childish drawing, a house, 3 stick figures, a sun, shattered something inside him. Adrian looked back at Naomi, his voice rough. You should have told me. Her laugh was bitter and low. Told you? Adrian, you walked away. You left me standing there with nothing but ashes. What was I supposed to do? Chase you down and beg you to stay? Her words landed like blows. The children glanced between them nervously, sensing the storm though not understanding it. Adrian's jaw tightened, but his voice softened. I never stopped. He cut himself off, swallowing the truth that suddenly felt too raw to speak aloud. Naomi's eyes glistened, but her walls remained. Don't you dare stand here and rewrite history. For a moment, silence pressed heavy between them, filled with all the things they hadn't said in years. The children fidgeted, confused by the tension. Finally, Adrian leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. We can't do this here, but I'm not leaving without answers. Naomi's hand curled protectively around Mariyah's shoulder, her eyes blazing with warning. You'll leave when I say you leave. And Adrian, her voice trembled but didn't break. You don't get to decide when you're a father, not after missing every first word, every scraped knee. Every night they cried for someone who wasn't there. Her words hit him harder than any deal gone wrong, any public scandal, any betrayal. This wasn't about money or pride or power. This was about what he had lost and what he might never be able to get back. Adrian sat there, silent, every muscle tight with unspoken emotion. He had faced competitors, critics, and crises, but nothing prepared him for the 3 pairs of eyes staring up at him with curiosity, confusion, and something dangerously close to recognition. Naomi turned back to her children, forcing her voice steady. Eat up, loves. Dessert's coming. Her dismissal stung more than a slap. Adrian stood slowly, his chest heavy, his throat tight. He looked at her one last time, his voice hoarse. This isn't over. And with that, he walked back toward his table, leaving Naomi trembling, her children bewildered, and his own heart fractured open in ways he hadn't felt in years. If you were Naomi, would you have told Adrian the truth back then, or kept a secret like she did? Comment your thoughts. I'd love to know. The next morning, Adrian sat in his penthouse, staring at the skyline without seeing it. The city moved as it always did. Traffic horn blaring, helicopters slicing the sky. But inside, everything was still. He hadn't slept. His mind replayed the restaurant scene on an endless loop. Naomi's eyes blazing with defiance. The children's faces, mirrors of his own blood. Her words, you don't get to decide when you're a father, still burned in his ears. He clenched his jaw and told himself it wasn't certain. DNA tests existed for a reason. Maybe this was a trick. Maybe she wanted something from him. Money, security. People always wanted something from him. But even as he tried to reason with himself, his chest tightened. Deep down he knew. He had known the moment he looked into their eyes. He slammed the glass down on the counter, the sharp crack echoing through the empty room. For once, power was useless. Wealth was useless. If those children were his, he had already lost the years that mattered most, and that thought terrified him more than any hostile takeover ever could. Naomi, meanwhile, packed 3 lunchboxes with trembling hands. Mommy, Mariyah asked carefully, who was that man last night? Naomi froze, her back turned so her daughter wouldn't see the flicker of panic in her eyes. Just someone I used to know. But he looked at us funny, Malik chimed in, stuffing an apple into his backpack. Like he knew us. Micah tilted his head thoughtfully. Do we know him? Naomi swallowed hard. Her instinct screamed to protect him, to shield him from the storm she felt brewing. No, she said too quickly. He doesn't matter. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they were a lie. He mattered. He always had. That evening, Adrian showed up outside Naomi's brownstone. He hadn't planned it. His driver asked where to go after work, and Adrian found himself saying her street name. Now he stood in the shadow of a tree, watching her through the second-floor window as she shepherded the kids through homework and bedtime. The sight struck him harder than he expected. Naomi, sitting cross-legged on the couch, listening intently to Malik stumble through a reading passage. Mariyah nestled against her side. Micah drawing quietly at the coffee table. It was the home. Something warm, messy, real. Everything his penthouse wasn't, and he wasn't part of it. He almost rang the buzzer. Almost. His hand hovered near the gate before he pulled it back, shame and fear flooding him. He didn't know how to enter that world, their world, without shattering it. So he left. Days passed, and both of them resisted. Naomi avoided Midtown altogether, refusing to risk bumping into him again. She buried herself in work, in school runs, in laundry and bills, and endless responsibilities. She told herself it didn't matter if he wanted answers. She wouldn't give him the chance to wound her again. But late at night, when the apartment grew quiet and the children slept, she caught herself staring at the ceiling, remembering the way he used to hold her, the promises whispered in the dark, the future they once dreamed of, and she hated herself for it. Adrian buried himself in meetings, acquisitions, boardroom battles. He told his assistant to double his schedule, keep him moving, keep him distracted. He won deals, signed contracts, shook hands, but his mind wasn't on the numbers. It was on Naomi's bitter laugh, on the triplets' curious eyes. He told himself to forget, but he couldn't. The collision became inevitable 1 week later. Naomi was at the grocery store, juggling a shopping cart and 3 restless kids. Malik begged for cereal. Mariyah trailed behind reading a book. Micah hummed as he stared at the fruit aisle. Then a voice behind her froze her spine. Naomi. She turned sharply, and there he was again, Adrian, in the middle of the fluorescent-lit supermarket, still impossibly polished in a dark suit, looking absurdly out of place among the carts and coupons. Her grip on the cart tightened. What are you doing here? Looking for you, he admitted, his voice low. Her eyes flashed. You don't get to look for me after all this time. You lost that right. Naomi, don't. She shoved the cart forward, her children glancing between them with wide eyes. Adrian followed. I just want to talk. About what? About how you walked away. About how you left me to raise 3 children on my own. Her voice cracked, but she masked it with steel. His gaze flicked to the kids. They were watching closely now. He lowered his voice, rough with frustration. Not here. Naomi stopped, her chest rising and falling with fury. Then nowhere. For a moment, silence stretched. The triplets stared at them both, sensing the charged tension without understanding it. Finally, Adrian stepped back, his jaw tight. Fine, but this isn't over. Naomi's hand tightened on the cart. She turned away, refusing to let him see the tears pricking her eyes. She would not let him back in. She couldn't. But as she walked out of the store, Adrian's words echoed inside her. This isn't over. And deep down, she knew he was right. Do you think Naomi is right to keep resisting Adrian, or should she give him a chance to explain? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious where you stand. It happened on a rainy Thursday. Naomi had just picked up the kids from school when the storm broke, sheets of water drenching the city in minutes. She ushered the triplets into a cab, praying it wouldn't break down in the flood of traffic. But halfway across town, the driver cursed. The car coughed, sputtered, and finally stalled on 125th Street. Out, he said apologetically, pointing at the rain. I can't move it. Naomi groaned, pulling the children close under her umbrella. She scanned the street for another cab, but everyone was taken. The storm showed no mercy, soaking her shoes, plastering her scarf to her head. Then a sleek black town car slid to the curb, the back window lowered. Adrian's face appeared. Her stomach dropped. Get in, he said. No, she snapped automatically. The rain pelted harder, wind pushing water into the children's faces. Malik whimpered. Mariyah clutched her book protectively to her chest. Micah sneezed. Naomi, Adrian said firmly, his voice cutting through the storm. They'll catch cold. Get in the car. She hesitated, pride warring with practicality. Finally, with a muttered curse under her breath, she herded the children toward the car. The driver opened the door, and the 4 of them slid inside, dripping wet. The air was warm, the leather seats soft, the world outside muffled by tinted glass. Naomi sat stiffly on one side, the children squirming beside her. Adrian sat across, his gaze steady, his suit untouched by the storm. The contrast between them had never felt sharper. Silence thickened the space. The triplets whispered among themselves, their eyes flicking between the imposing man across from them and their mother's rigid posture. Finally, Malik, bold as ever, broke the silence. "Are you rich?" Adrian blinked. "Excuse me?" "You've got a fancy car," Malik said matter-of-factly. "Only rich people have cars like this." Adrian's lips twitched despite himself. "Yes, I suppose I am." Mariyah piped up, curious. "What do you do?" Adrian leaned forward slightly, studying their eager faces. "I build things. Companies. Ideas. I make sure people have jobs." Micah tilted his head. "So you're the boss?" Adrian chuckled softly. "Something like that." Naomi shot him a warning look. But she couldn't stop the flicker of warmth that stirred at the sound of her children's laughter mixing with his voice. The ride stretched long as the storm worsened. Streets flooded. Traffic slowed to a crawl. They were stuck together, like it or not. Adrian shifted his gaze back to Naomi. "I've been patient, but we can't keep dancing around this." She stiffened. "We're not doing this in front of them." Then when his voice was quiet but relentless, "When will you stop running?" Her jaw clenched. "I'm not running. I'm protecting them." "From me?" The question slipped out sharper than he intended. Naomi met his gaze, her eyes blazing. "Yes, from you. Because I know how you operate, Adrian. You take what you want. And when it doesn't fit your world, you walk away." The words landed heavy, the children falling silent at the tension between their mother and this man they didn't understand. Adrian inhaled, fighting the anger that threatened to rise. "Naomi, you're wrong." "Am I?" She shot back, her voice cracking under the weight of years unsaid. "Tell me, where were you when I needed you most? When I begged you to see me, to choose me instead of your empire?" His chest tightened. Shame flickered across his face, uninvited but undeniable. The car grew quiet. Only the sound of rain against the roof filled the space. Then Micah spoke softly, his child's voice piercing the heavy silence. "Mommy, who is he?" Naomi's throat closed. She glanced at Adrian, her eyes shimmering with fear and anger. Adrian's gaze dropped to boy. His voice, when it came, was rough but gentle. "Someone who should have been here a long time ago." Naomi turned sharply toward him. "Stop. Don't you dare." But Micah's eyes widened, curiosity burning. "Are you our dad?" The question hung in the air like thunder. Naomi's breath hitched. She gripped the boy's hand tightly, unable to form words. Adrian swallowed hard, his heart in his throat. "I don't know yet, but I want to." Naomi closed her eyes, tears threatening. The triplets stared between them, their little worlds tilting under the weight of an answer they didn't fully understand. The car slowed to a stop outside Naomi's brownstone. She gathered herself quickly, pulling her children close. "Out! Let's go." The kid slid reluctantly from the car, glancing back at Adrian with wide, questioning eyes. Naomi turned to follow, but Adrian's voice stopped her. "Naomi." She froze. He leaned forward, his expression raw, unguarded. "Please, don't shut me out. Not this time." For the first time, she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen in years. Not arrogance, not control, but fear. Fear of losing them before he even had a chance. She blinked hard, then shook her head. "Good night, Adrian." And with that, she stepped out into the rain, pulling the children with her. The door closed. The car pulled away. And Adrian sat in the back seat, fists clenched, heart pounding, knowing he was already in too deep to walk away. If you were in Naomi's place, would you have let Adrian explain to the kids? Or was she right to shut it down? Let me know in the comments. Naomi sat awake that night, long after the triplets had fallen asleep. The storm had passed, but inside her chest, thunder still rumbled. She stood at the window, arms crossed, watching raindrops trail down the glass. Her mind wandered back, years back, to the day everything crumbled. She had been 27, standing in their penthouse kitchen, her hands shaking as she held the pregnancy test. Adrian walked in, phone pressed his ear, rattling off instructions to a board member. She remembered the way her heart pounded as she waited for him to finish. When he finally lowered the phone, she whispered, "I'm pregnant." At first, his expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded, calculating, not joyful. "Naomi, we're not ready for this." Her throat had closed. "We've been married for 3 years. If not now, then when? You know how much is at stake right now. The merger, the press." She had cut him off, her voice trembling. "This is a child, Adrian. Our child, not a line item in your portfolio." His jaw tightened, silence stretching between them like a canyon. That silence had grown into days, then weeks. Fights followed, bitter, endless fights. She wanted a partner. He gave her excuses. She wanted presence. He gave her absence. And the final blow came one night, when she begged him to choose their marriage over his empire. And he didn't. Back in the present, Naomi wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The triplets shifted in their sleep. Little bodies tangled in blankets. Innocent faces unaware of the war raging in her heart. She told herself she'd done the right thing by walking away, by raising them alone. She couldn't risk exposing them to the man who once saw them as an obstacle. But why, then, did the sight of him with them, the softness in his eyes, the way he had answered Mike in the car, make her chest ache with something dangerously close to hope? Across town, Adrian sat at his desk, a file open in front of him but unread. His mind, too, had wandered back. He remembered the look on Naomi's face the day she left. She had stood in the doorway, suitcase by her side, her voice hoarse from nights of crying. "I can't do this anymore, Adrian. I can't raise a child alone while you chase skyscrapers. I'm doing this for us," he had snapped. "No," she whispered, her eyes broken. "You're doing this for you." And then she was gone. Adrian leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. He had told himself for years that she abandoned him, that she didn't believe in his vision. But now, seeing those children, their children, the truth hit him like a freight train. She hadn't left him. He had driven her away. The following weekend fate, or perhaps something greater, forced them together again. Mariyah had been invited to a friend's birthday party at the Central Park Zoo. Naomi brought all three, of course, juggling cupcakes and gift bags, trying to wrangle Malik away from the monkeys and Micah from the reptiles. And then Adrian appeared. He wasn't there by chance. He had learned about the party from a mutual acquaintance, and though Naomi bristled at the sight of him, she couldn't stop him from being in the same public space. When the party ended, the children tugged at her sleeves. "Can we stay a little longer, Mommy? Please." She hesitated. Adrian stood nearby, hands in his pockets, watching quietly. "Fine," she sighed. The triplets dashed toward the petting zoo, squealing with delight. Naomi followed slowly, only to find Adrian beside her. She glared. "Stalking me now?" "Being here," he said evenly. "It's the only way you'll stop running." She opened her mouth to argue, but Malik's laughter caught her attention. He was feeding a goat, his grin wide and carefree. Adrian's gaze followed. "They're incredible," he murmured, all softening his voice. Naomi's throat tightened. She hated that tone, hated that it sounded genuine. For a long moment, they stood side by side, watching the children play. Finally, Adrian spoke again, quietly. "I wasn't ready back then. I was terrified, Naomi. My father, he was never there, and I swore I wouldn't repeat his mistakes. But when you told me you were pregnant, all I saw was failure waiting to happen. So I did the very thing I feared most. I became him." Naomi turned sharply, her eyes stinging. "And in the process, you left me to raise 3 children alone." "I know." His voice cracked. "And I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Her heart ached at the rawness in his tone, but her guard shot back up. "Words are easy, Adrian. Regret doesn't put food on the table. Regret doesn't tuck them in at night." He flinched, but nodded. "Then let me prove it. Let me show up now." Naomi's laugh was bitter. "Now, after nearly a decade." He met her gaze, steady, unblinking. "It's late, but it's not too late." Her breath hitched. For a heartbeat, she saw the man she had once loved. Not the billionaire, not the empire builder, but the boy who once held her hand under city lights and promised her forever. Then she blinked, and the walls came back up. "We'll see," she whispered, turning away. Adrian stood there, watching her walk toward the children. For the first time in years, he felt both powerless and hopeful, because for the first time, Naomi hadn't told him to leave. Do you believe people can truly change after years apart? Or is Naomi right to keep her guard up? Share your thoughts in the comments. It started with small moments. Adrian began showing up, not with grand gestures, but with consistency. He offered to pick the children up from school, and though Naomi hesitated, she eventually agreed, if only to prove to herself he would fail. But he didn't. The triplets ran to him the first afternoon, uncertain at first, then warming as he walked them home. Malik peppered him with endless questions about cars, skyscrapers, and money. Mariyah asked about books she couldn't yet find at the library. Micah simply held Adrian's hand, silent but curious, as though studying him. Adrian had faced investors worth billions, but had never felt more nervous than when three small voices asked, "Can you come tomorrow too?" And when he said yes, he meant it. Naomi watched warily from the window as the days passed. She saw him tie shoelaces, carry backpacks, sit cross-legged on the floor playing board games. She saw her children's laughter grow louder, brighter, fuller, and she hated that it stirred something in her chest. One evening, Adrian lingered after dinner. Naomi stood at the sink, washing dishes, when he walked in holding a storybook. "They asked me to read to them," he said, almost sheepishly. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Do you even know how to do bedtime?" His lips quirked into a half-smile. "I can read a book, Naomi." She wanted to refuse, but her children's eager faces softened her resolve. So she dried her hands, folded her arms, and leaned against the doorway as Adrian sat on the edge of the bed. The children nestled around him, their eyes wide as he began reading aloud. His deep voice rolled through the room, steady and warm, giving life to the words. He stumbled once, and Malik giggled. Adrian grinned, the kind of grin Naomi hadn't seen in years, unguarded, boyish, real. By the time he closed the book, all three were fast asleep, their little breaths even and soft. Naomi's heart ached as she watched him carefully tuck the blanket around them. For a fleeting moment, he looked like he belonged, like this was always supposed to be their life. Later, they sat at the kitchen table, the silence between them less sharp than usual. Adrian traced the rim of his coffee mug, his gaze lowered. "I missed all of this," he murmured. Naomi's jaw tightened. "You had a choice." "I know," he admitted. He looked up, eyes raw. "And I made the wrong one." The sincerity in his voice rattled her. She wanted to stay angry, to keep the fortress around her heart intact. But his vulnerability chipped at the stone wall she had built. "You can't just show up now and expect it all to be fixed," she whispered. "I don't," he said. "But I'm here, and I'll keep being here, even if you hate me for it." Naomi's throat burned. She looked away, blinking fast. A week later, Naomi found herself laughing. Truly laughing, for the first time in years. It happened when Malik convinced Adrian to play basketball with him at the park. Adrian, in a tailored suit and leather shoes, looked ridiculous chasing after a ball. The children howled with laughter, and to Naomi's shock, so did she. Adrian's laugh joined hers, deep and genuine, echoing across the court. For a moment, it felt like old times, the days before pride and ambition destroyed everything. And for that brief instant, Naomi let herself imagine a world where this could last. That night, after the children were asleep, Adrian lingered again. Naomi sat on the couch, arms folded, but the fire in her eyes had softened. "You've changed," she said quietly. He met her gaze, steady. "I had to." "Why now?" He exhaled slowly. "Because the second I saw them, I knew my life wasn't what I thought it was. The money, the power, none of it matters if I don't have them. If I don't have," he trailed off, his voice catching. Naomi's breath hitched. "Don't." But even as she said it, tears filled her eyes. The silence stretched, heavy with everything they weren't saying. "Finally," Adrian whispered, "Naomi, I never stopped loving you." Her heart clenched. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him love was enough. But instead, she whispered back, "You're too late." His eyes glistened, but he nodded. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm not." Naomi turned away, tears spilling down her cheeks. She hated him. She wanted him. She didn't know which was stronger. For the first time in years, there was a fragile thread of hope between them, a bond tentative but real, weaving itself back together. And though Naomi fought it, she couldn't deny the truth. Her heart was no longer safe. Do you believe Naomi should trust Adrian's change of heart? Or is she right to keep her walls up? I'd love to hear your take in the comments. His fragile peace shattered on a Friday evening. Naomi had agreed, hesitantly, to let Adrian take the triplets to his office for the afternoon. He wanted to show them where he worked, to let them see the world he had built. She had warned him not to overwhelm them, not to turn it into a spectacle. But when they returned, Naomi's heart sank. The children tumbled into the apartment carrying gift bags, expensive toys, branded clothes, even tiny watches that looked far too costly for little wrists. "Mommy, look what Daddy gave us," Malik shouted proudly. Naomi froze. The word Daddy hit her like a bullet. But it wasn't just that. It was extravagance, the flash, the very thing she had feared. Adrian walked in behind them, smiling faintly. They had a good time. Her voice cut through the air. "What is this?" "They're gifts," he said, as though it were obvious. Her anger flared. "This is exactly why I didn't want you around them. You're buying their love, turning them into trophies." His expression hardened. "That's not what this is." "Really? Because all I see is the same man I left, the one who thinks money fixes everything." The children froze, their excitement crumbling under the sharpness of her tone. "Naomi," Adrian said evenly, fighting to control his temper, "they're my children. I wanted to give them something special. You don't get to show up after 9 years and start throwing money around like that erases the past." Her voice broke, raw with fury and pain. The triplets looked between them, wide-eyed, sensing the storm but not fully understanding it. Later, when the children were asleep, the fight reignited. Naomi stood in the kitchen, arms trembling, while Adrian leaned against the counter, his jaw tight. "You still don't trust me," he said quietly. "Why should I?" Her voice shook. "You've proven, over and over, that the only thing you know how to give is money." His eyes darkened. "That's not fair." "It's the truth," she shot back. "When I needed you, when we needed you, you weren't there. And now you think a few bedtime stories and some shiny gifts make you a father." Her words cut deep. He flinched but didn't retreat. "I'm trying, Naomi. For the first time in my life, I'm trying to do this right." She shook her head, tears spilling. "It's too late. You don't get to walk back into our lives and rewrite history." He stepped closer, desperation bleeding into his voice. "And what about us? You and me? You can't stand there and tell me you feel nothing." Naomi's chest heaved. "I feel plenty. Anger, resentment, pain, love," he whispered. Her silence was deafening. Adrian's face fell. He backed away slowly, his voice hoarse. "I see. You'll never forgive me." "Maybe not," she whispered. And in that moment, both of them felt the ground collapse beneath the fragile bond they had rebuilt. The following days were tense. Adrian stopped lingering at the apartment. He still picked up the children, still read to them, but the warmth between him and Naomi had turned to ice. Their conversations were clipped, their silences heavy. The triplets noticed. Malik asked one night, "Why is Mommy mad at Daddy?" Naomi's throat closed. She didn't answer. Micah grew quiet, clinging more to Naomi, studying her with worried eyes. Mariyah tried to fix it, drawing pictures of Mommy, Daddy, and us. Pictures Naomi folded away with shaking hands. The rift wasn't just between Adrian and Naomi now. It had seeped into the children's little hearts. Finally, one evening, the breaking point came. Adrian stood in the doorway after dropping the children off, his face pale, exhausted. "Naomi, we can't keep doing this. The tension, they feel it. They're hurting because of us." Naomi's voice was brittle. "Then maybe you should stop coming. The silence that followed was brutal. Adrian swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. "Is that really what you want?" Her lips trembled. "Yes." He nodded slowly, as if the weight of her words pressed down on his very soul. "Then I'll go," he whispered. He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, each one heavier than the last. Naomi closed the door with trembling hands, her body collapsing against it. Tears streamed down her face as the children's laughter from the other room pierced through her breaking heart. For the first time in years, she wondered if she had just destroyed the one chance they all had at healing. Adrian sat alone in his penthouse that night, staring out over the glittering city. The empire he had built felt like ash in his hands. For the first time in his life, he felt utterly powerless and utterly alone. The days after Adrian's departure were eerily quiet. Naomi moved through her routines like a ghost, forcing smiles with children, packing lunches, rushing them to school. But every night, when the apartment fell silent, she sat awake staring at the empty space across the table. She hated herself for missing him, but she missed him all the same. Adrian, on the other hand, threw himself into work. Meetings, deals, endless phone calls, all the things that once filled his life with purpose. But now, each win felt hollow. He would glance at his phone, expecting a message that never came. One night, he closed his laptop and walked into the vast emptiness of his penthouse. The silence mocked him. For the first time in years, he admitted aloud what had been gnawing at him since Naomi walked back into his life. "I don't want this," he whispered. "Not without them." Meanwhile, Naomi's inner war raged louder. She found Malik building a Lego tower and whispering, "Daddy would like this." She overheard Mariyah reading a storybook in Adrian's cadence. She saw Micah drawing a picture of a man in a suit holding his hand. Her children missed him. Her children needed him. But could she? Could she trust the man who had once broken her so completely? A week later, Naomi found herself at her sister Evelyn's apartment, pouring her heart out over coffee. "I can't let him back in," Naomi said, her hands trembling around the mug. "If he leaves again, if he hurts them, I don't think I could survive it." Evelyn studied her quietly, then spoke gently. "Naomi, you survived worse. You raised 3 kids on your own. You built a life when he wasn't there. But maybe the question isn't whether you can survive without him. Maybe it's whether you're brave enough to survive with him." Naomi's chest tightened. "And what if he hasn't really changed? Then you'll know, and you'll walk away. But if he has, are you really willing to deny your kids the chance to know their father, or yourself the chance to know love again?" The truth landed heavy, sharp as glass. Naomi had no answer. That night, Adrian stood on his balcony, staring down at the city. The wind whipped his hair. The lights below blurred through the sting in his eyes. He thought of Naomi's voice, the children's laughter, the way his name had sounded in Micah's tentative whisper. He had been given a second chance, and he had almost destroyed it. For the first time, he understood that love wasn't about control or money or winning. It was about surrender, vulnerability, choosing to stay even when it was terrifying. And so he made a decision. He would not let fear steal this from him again. 2 days later, fate intervened. Naomi was walking the triplets home from school when the sky opened up, rain pouring down just as it had the night Adrian first pulled up beside them. Malik squealed. Mariyah complained about her wet hair. Micah clutched Naomi's hand tighter. And then, through the curtain of rain, she saw him, Adrian, standing on the corner, umbrella in hand, suit soaked through. He wasn't waiting in a car this time. He wasn't shielded by tinted glass or distance. He was just standing there, her breath caught. The children spotted him first. "Daddy!" Malik shouted, running forward. Mariyah followed, her laughter ringing. Micah hesitated, then bolted too. Naomi froze. Adrian crouched low, arms wide, catching them all as they barreled into him. His umbrella fell, the rain drenching them, but he didn't care. He hugged them tightly, his face buried in their wet hair, his shoulders shaking. When he looked up, his eyes locked on Naomi's. For a moment, the world went silent. the rain falling like a curtain around them. Adrian's voice cracked as he spoke. Naomi, I'm done running from you, from them, from us. If all you'll give me is a chance to stand in the rain and watch them grow up from a distance, I'll take it. But I can't walk away again. Not now. Not ever. Her chest ached, her breath shallow. She wanted to run, to push him away, to protect herself. But Evelyn's words echoed in her mind. Are you brave enough to survive with him? Naomi's tears mingled with the rain. For the first time, she let her walls crack. She whispered, barely audible, then prove it, Adrian. The storm raged on, but between them, something fragile, something fierce, took root. At this moment in the rain, if you were Naomi, would you let Adrian back into your life, or keep him at arm's length? Drop your answer in the comments. The rain-soaked night at the corner became the turning point. Naomi didn't let Adrian back in all at once. Trust wasn't something she could rebuild overnight, but she let him walk them home that evening. She let him stay for dinner, and when he read to the children before bed, she didn't stand in the doorway with her arms crossed. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching silently, tears hidden in the dark. The days that followed unfolded slowly, cautiously, but beautifully. Adrian began weaving himself into their routines, not as a guest, but as family. He made breakfast one morning, burning the eggs so badly the triplets laughed until their sides hurt. He fumbled through helping Mariyah with her math homework, only to be schooled by his 8-year-old daughter. He joined Malik at the basketball court again, this time ditching the suit for sneakers. And when Micah grew frustrated with a Lego tower that kept collapsing, Adrian knelt down and whispered, "Let's build it together." Each moment was small, but together. They built something far more powerful than the empire Adrian had once worshipped. They built trust. Naomi still wrestled with her fear. One night, long after the children had fallen asleep, she confronted him. "You say you've changed," she whispered, her voice fragile. "But what happens when your world calls again? When the boardroom wants you more than we do?" Adrian's jaw tightened, but his eyes stayed soft. "Then they'll have to wait. Because the first time, Naomi, I know what matters. And it's not skyscrapers. It's not Forbes lists. It's this apartment. It's their laughter. It's you." Her throat ached. She searched his face for cracks, for signs of the man who once let ambition blind him. But all she saw was sincerity. And for the first time, she let herself believe him. Weeks later, Adrian invited them all to Bernardin, the very place where the story began. Naomi hesitated at first, memories tugging at her heart. But she agreed, if only because the children were thrilled at the idea of a fancy dinner. They arrived together. The triplets dressed smartly, Naomi radiant in a simple navy dress. Heads turned as they entered, not because Adrian King was a billionaire, but because of the sight he made with his family, a man who had once been untouchable, now walking with 3 small hands clutching his. At their table, laughter bubbled. Malik spilled water. Mariyah tried to correct his table manners. Micah sat quietly, studying the menu with furrowed brows before whispering, "Can I just get chicken nuggets?" Naomi laughed until her sides ached. Adrian leaned back, watching them, his chest full. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing Naomi's. She stiffened at first. Then, slowly, she let her hand rest in his. When dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate sphere that melted under warm sauce, the triplets squealed with delight. Naomi glanced up and caught Adrian's gaze. And in that moment, she realized something. This wasn't about erasing the past. It wasn't about pretending the pain never existed. It was about choosing every day to build something new from the ashes. It was about forgiveness. And it was about love. Later that night, after the children were tucked in, Adrian stood at her door. "Naomi," he said softly. She met his eyes, her heart racing. "I don't expect perfection," he continued. "I don't expect you to forget the hurt. But I promise I will be here every day, not as a billionaire, not as some man chasing power, but as a father, and as the man who still loves you." Her eyes filled with tears. "And if you fail us again, then you'll throw me out," he said simply. "And I'll deserve it, But I won't fail. Not this time. The silence stretched, charged fragile. Finally, Naomi stepped forward, closing the distance between them. She placed a trembling hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. And for the first time in nearly a decade, she whispered the words she had once buried. I still love you two. Adrian's breath caught. He pulled her gently into his arms, holding her as though she were the only thing keeping him standing. And in that embrace, the past finally loosened its grip. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Naomi stood at the window, watching Adrian in the courtyard below. He was chasing Malik with a basketball, Mariyah with a book in hand, Micah holding tight to his father's arm. Their laughter floated upward, bright and unburdened. Naomi smiled through tears. They had found their way back. Not perfectly, not easily, but honestly, and that was enough. Do you believe true love deserves a second chance, even after years of heartbreak? Share your thoughts below, because this is one story where your voice matters too.